What if the very foundation of trust and loyalty that we build our relationships on is nothing more than an illusion? What if the people you rely on, the ones you consider allies, are only waiting for the right moment to turn on you? Power isn't given, it's taken. Loyalty isn't eternal, it's conditional. These are the hard truths Niccolò Machiavelli exposed in The Prince, a book so ruthless, so brutally honest, it has shaped empires, toppled kings, and forged tyrants. For centuries, his words have echoed through the halls of power, revealing the cold, unforgiving reality of how the world actually works. This is not a message for the faint-hearted. This is for those who understand that the world is a battlefield where morality is a luxury few can afford. The true nature of humanity is not noble or kind. It's selfish, deceptive, and dangerous. Machiavelli saw through the facade long before anyone else, exposing the raw truths about human behavior that no one dares speak aloud. Trust is weakness. Suspicion is survival. His writings teach us that power is not about being liked or loved. It's about making sure no one can turn against you. History is a relentless cycle, repeating itself over and over again. The ones who trust others often end up betrayed. Just look at Julius Caesar. He trusted the loyalty of his own senators, and yet they stabbed him 23 times in the back, men he considered friends. In business, partners often start as allies but end as bitter enemies. Money and power change everything, turning even the closest relationships into battlefields. The truth is, every person has a price, a breaking point, where their loyalty fades away. This is the grim reality that Machiavelli understood, and it's one that we must confront if we are to survive in the cutthroat world of power. Machiavelli teaches us that fear is a far more reliable tool than affection. People may resent you for making them afraid, but they will obey. Love can fade overnight, but the memory of punishment lasts forever. Look at any successful ruler throughout history, from ancient emperors to modern CEOs, and you'll find this principle at work. They reward just enough to keep people hopeful, but punish severely enough to make rebellion unthinkable. The moment a leader shows vulnerability, the wolves begin circling. This isn't paranoia, it's simple observation of how power actually functions in the real world. Every smiling subordinate, every eager assistant, every devoted follower, they're all calculating what you can do for them and how quickly they should abandon you if your usefulness ends. The wise leader understands this and never lets their guard down completely. They know that trust must always be conditional, that loyalty must constantly be tested, and that no one should ever be given enough power to become a threat. This isn't about being cruel. It's about survival in a world where weakness gets exploited. The people who succeed long-term aren't the most likable or trusting. They're the ones who understand human nature and act accordingly. They don't take betrayal personally because they expect it. They don't rely on gratitude because they know it's fleeting. Instead, they structure relationships so that betrayal becomes too costly and loyalty remains the safest option. This is the harsh truth that Machiavelli forces us to confront. Morality is a luxury that powerful people can't always afford. In the game of power, the winners are those who see people for what they truly are, not what they pretend to be. They know that beneath every polite conversation, every friendly gesture, every promise made, there's a calculation being made about advantage and survival. The moment you forget this, you become vulnerable. The moment you trust completely, you've already lost. This isn't a pessimistic view, it's a realistic one, proven by thousands of years of human history. From royal courts to corporate boardrooms, the rules remain the same. The people who thrive understand that trust is a weapon to be used carefully, not a gift to be given freely. They know that everyone has a breaking point, and the key to maintaining power is making sure no one reaches theirs. This is the brutal lesson Machiavelli teaches us, in a world where everyone is looking out for themselves. The only way to protect your position is to assume the worst about human nature and be pleasantly surprised when people prove you wrong, rather than devastated when they prove you right. The fundamental truth of power is this: betrayal is not a possibility, it is an inevitability. Every relationship, every alliance, every promise carries within it the seeds of its own destruction. The naive believe in loyalty, in honor, in the sanctity of their agreements, but history shows us again and again that these are illusions that crumble the moment real power is at stake. Machiavelli did not merely observe this truth, he weaponized it. His writings reveal the cold mechanics of betrayal, when to do it, how to do it, and most importantly, why you must always do it first. Consider the brutal calculus of power. Every person in your orbit, whether a trusted advisor, a business partner, or a close ally, is ultimately driven by self-interest. They stand with you only so long as standing with you serves their purposes. The moment that calculation shifts, their loyalty evaporates. This is not cynicism, it is observable reality. The Medici, the Borgias, the great dynasties of history, they did not rise to power by trusting blindly. They rose by understanding that in the pursuit of dominance, hesitation is fatal. The weak wait for proof of betrayal before acting. They cling to the hope that their allies will remain loyal, that their friends will stand by them, that their subordinates will not overreach. This is a delusion that has destroyed empires. The strong, by contrast, recognize the warning signs long before the knife is drawn. They see the subtle shifts in allegiance, the quiet accumulation of power by those beneath them, the murmurs of discontent. And when they do, they act swiftly, decisively, and without remorse. There is an art to strategic betrayal. It cannot be done recklessly, nor can it be done without calculation. The ruler who betrays too openly invites rebellion. The leader who strikes without justification turns even loyal followers against them. The key is to make betrayal inevitable while ensuring you are never the one who appears to have broken faith. This is why the great strategists of history, men like Caesar, Borgia, Otto von Bismarck, or even certain modern corporate raiders, always ensured their betrayals were framed as necessity rather than malice. They created the conditions where their actions seemed justified, even righteous. The modern world is no different. In business, executives are ousted not when they fail, but when they become inconvenient. In politics, alliances shift overnight based on polling data and backroom deals. Even in personal relationships, loyalty lasts only as long as the benefits outweigh the costs. The lesson is clear. If you do not control the narrative of betrayal, you will become its victim. Machiavelli's most enduring insight was this: power is not about being loved or even feared, it is about being unavoidable. The ruler who makes themselves indispensable, who ensures that betrayal carries too high a cost, is the one who survives. But even this is not enough. No position is ever truly secure. The moment you believe you are safe is the moment your downfall begins. This is why the truly powerful do not wait for betrayal. They preempt it. They remove threats before those threats can act. They reward loyalty just enough to keep it useful, but never enough to let it grow complacent. They understand that trust is not a bond, but a leash, one that must be held firmly and released only when necessary. The choice is stark but simple. You can be the one who wields power, or you can be the one who is crushed by it. There is no middle ground. The art of strategic betrayal is not about cruelty, it is about survival. And in the end, survival is the only game that matters. Act first or be acted upon. There are no other options. Power does not respond to appeals. It responds only to force. This is the brutal truth that separates rulers from servants. Every act of mercy, every display of compassion, every moment of hesitation is an opening your enemies will exploit without remorse. Machiavelli understood what modern leaders have forgotten. Fear is the only currency that never depreciates. History's greatest conquerors built empires not through benevolence, but through terror. Genghis Khan didn't unite the steppes by being reasonable. He burned cities to the ground until surrender became the only option. The Roman Empire didn't maintain order through polite requests. They crucified rebels along highways as warnings. Even today, the most effective corporate takeovers aren't friendly mergers. They're brutal acquisitions where resistance is made unthinkable. The fatal mistake of weak leaders is believing kindness earns loyalty. It doesn't. Kindness is interpreted as what it truly is, a sign of insecurity, an admission that you need to be liked. The moment your subordinates sense this need, they begin testing boundaries, first with small acts of defiance, then with outright challenges to your authority. By the time you realize what's happening, it's already too late. You're negotiating from a position of desperation rather than commanding from a position of strength. True power operates differently. It establishes absolute consequences from the beginning. It makes examples of the first person to step out of line, not just punishing them, but annihilating them in a way that echoes through the organization. One public execution is worth 1,000 private warnings. When employees see what happens to those who challenge authority, the need for constant discipline disappears. The rules enforce themselves. This isn't theory, it's observable reality. Look at any high-performing organization, military unit, or successful regime. The common thread isn't warm feelings, it's clear, uncompromising standards, enforced without exception. The Marine Corps doesn't build elite warriors through consensus. They break recruits down until only absolute obedience remains. Top hedge funds don't tolerate underperformance. They fire traitors the moment they become liabilities. The modern world has softened this truth with illusions of emotional intelligence and servant leadership, but the underlying mechanics remain unchanged. People follow strength, not virtue. They respect power, not fairness, and they obey not because they want to, but because they have no other choice. The lesson is simple, but uncomfortable. If your leadership depends on being liked, you've already lost. Real authority comes from making disobedience unthinkable, not through threats, but through demonstrated consequences. Not through anger, but through calm, calculated enforcement of absolute standards. Power isn't taken, it's demonstrated, and nothing demonstrates it like the ruins of those who dare to challenge it. The choice is yours. Command through fear of consequences, or beg for cooperation that will never come. There are no other options. Loyalty does not exist. It is a comforting myth the weak tell themselves to sleep at night, a fairy tale that evaporates the moment real power is at stake. Machiavelli saw through this deception with ruthless clarity. All allegiance is temporary, all devotion is conditional, and every alliance carries an expiration date. The ruler who forgets this truth signs their own death warrant. History's bloodiest lessons prove this beyond doubt. Brutus didn't betray Caesar because he was uniquely evil. He did it because the balance of power shifted. Thomas Cromwell didn't turn on Henry VII out of personal malice. He did it because survival demanded it. Even in modern corporations, executives don't overthrow CEOs because they're disloyal. They do it because the opportunity presents itself. The pattern never changes. When the cost of loyalty outweighs its benefits, betrayal becomes inevitable. The dangerous fantasy is believing you can create true loyalty through generosity or shared history. This is nonsense. No amount of past favors outweighs present opportunity. The Roman emperors learned this through poison and daggers. No matter how many victories a general won, how much wealth a senator was given, or how many promises were made, the outcome was always the same. When power was within reach, blood was spilled. Modern leaders make the same fatal error. They believe their charisma or vision will protect them. They trust handshake deals in personal relationships. Then comes the boardroom coup, the hostile takeover, the political backstabbing, always justified after the fact with righteous excuses, but always rooted in the same cold calculation of power. The solution isn't paranoia, it's systems. Smart rulers structure power so that betrayal becomes impossible, not because of goodwill, but because the mechanics make it futile. They ensure no subordinate accumulates enough influence to challenge them. They create competing power centers that cancel each other out. They make the cost of betrayal catastrophic while keeping the rewards of loyalty just sufficient. This is why the Medici survived while their enemies perished. Why certain corporate dynasties outlast their founders while others collapse overnight. Not because they were loved, but because they engineered environments where disloyalty was structural suicide. The lesson is brutal but essential. You cannot trust people. You can only trust structures. Build organizations where betrayal cannot succeed, not because people won't attempt it, but because your systems make failure certain. Reward just enough to maintain order, but never enough to create rivals. And when someone does test the boundaries, as they inevitably will, make their destruction so complete that it becomes a lesson for generations. Loyalty is the lie the powerful tell the weak to keep them obedient. True power comes from making disobedience impossible. The choice is yours. Build systems that enforce compliance or become another cautionary tale about misplaced trust. History remembers only the winners, and winners understand that in the game of power, the only real sin is naivety. There comes a moment in every leader's reign when they must choose between weakness and survival. This is the ultimate test of power, the decisive instant when morality becomes irrelevant and only results matter. Machiavelli's greatest lesson was this: the difference between kings and corpses lies in their willingness to act first. History's most effective rulers all shared one trait: they understood the precise moment when mercy became suicide. Augustus didn't hesitate to eliminate Mark Antony when their alliance outlived its usefulness. Catherine the Great didn't flinch at deposing and later executing her own husband to secure the Russian throne. In modern times, corporate raiders don't apologize when dismantling companies. They act because hesitation means losing billions. The weak see these actions as betrayals. The strong recognize them as necessities. There is no morality in power, only consequences. When a subordinate grows too popular, when an ally's interests begin diverging, when a partner becomes more liability than asset, these are not moments for negotiation. They are death sentences waiting to be carried out. The ruler who delays out of sentimentality or false loyalty signs their own downfall. Consider the alternative: the leaders who failed this test. Nicias of Athens hesitated in Sicily and watched his army slaughtered. The last Romanovs showed mercy to revolutionaries and were executed in abasement. CEOs who avoid firing incompetent executives watch their companies bleed out. The pattern never changes. Power belongs to those willing to do what others won't. Modern leaders fail because they attempt to balance morality with power. This is impossible. Power exists beyond good and evil. It operates on its own primal logic, where only strength matters. The boardroom, the political arena, the battlefield, all follow identical rules. The victors aren't those with the best intentions, but those with the clearest understanding of human nature's brutality. Machiavelli's final lesson is the most vital. Sentimentality is the luxury of the powerless. When your position is threatened, when your authority is challenged, when your survival is at stake, you must strike without hesitation, without remorse, and without warning. Not because you want to, but because history shows what happens to those who don't. Power flows to those who act while others debate. The throne belongs to whoever is willing to seize it first. The choice was never between right and wrong, only between winning and dying. And in this game, there are no consolation prizes for good intentions.